Year 5, Episode 5. Thank you guys for following this along. Important stuff. Let's look at the ministry principles from Nehemiah, Year 5. With prayer, let's apply these biblical principles from God's Old Testament. God's work will always face opposition. Nehemiah endured ridicule, threats, and betrayal, yet he stood firm because his conviction was rooted in God. Ministry leaders today also encounter criticism, discouragement, and distractions. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to trust God and stay faithful. Conviction gives servant leaders the backbone to press on when others want to quit. So under conviction and courage, we're going to look at 10 principles. The first principle is pray and post a guard from Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 9. When threats increased, Nehemiah didn't just pray, he also stationed guards. He trusted God while taking practical action. This principle is faith combines prayer with wisdom. As an example, as the church prays for safety while also training ushers and the security team in emergency procedures, right? Pray in postcards. Number 2, from Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 10 through 14. Deal with discouragement quickly. The builders grew weary and afraid of enemies. Nehemiah gathered them, reminded them of God's greatness, and encouraged them to keep going. This ministry principle is that leaders restore courage with God's truth. As an example, take a servant leader, a youth leader, reminds discouraged volunteers that their work is shaping eternal lives, not just filling time. Deal with discouragement quickly. Number 3, keep work and watch balanced. Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 16, 17, and 18. Half of the workers built, while the other half stood guard. Even builders kept weapons at their side. They worked and watched at the same time. This leadership principle is that leaders need to balance, easier said than done, productivity with protection. As an example, say a servant leader encourages evangelism while also teaching discernment about false teaching. Number 4, protect the vulnerable. This comes from chapter 5, the first 13 verses. Families cried out because they were starving, mortgaging fields, and selling children into slavery. Nehemiah stepped in to defend them. What's the ministry principle? Servant leaders defend the weak and the oppressed. So as the church starts a food pantry to care for struggling families in their community, that's an example of defending the weak and the oppressed. Praise the Lord, Leighton Hills Baptist Church does that with Fish and Loaves. What a great ministry. Number 5, from Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 15. Fear God more than people. Previous governors burdened the people, but Nehemiah refused such treatment. His decisions flowed from reverence for God, not fear of people. This ministry idea is that God's opinion matters more than people's opinions. God first, As a ministry example, a servant leader resists pressure to water down teaching to keep people comfortable. Right? Ouch. Number 6 comes from Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 3. Set boundaries and priorities. When invited to meet with enemies, Nehemiah answered, I'm doing a great work and cannot come down. Nehemiah actually refused any kind of distraction. The principle here is that lay leaders need to stay focused on God's assignment and not get distracted even by other good things, as it were. What would this look like? Well, say a small group leader declines extra tasks, other good deeds, so they can remain committed to discipling their group well and faithful. Number 7 of courage and conviction. Don't be distracted by slander. Comes from Nehemiah chapter 6, verses 5 through 9. Nehemiah received open letters accusing him of rebellion. And instead of being drawn into these arguments, he prayed for strength and then he kept working. So what's this ministry principle? Well, leaders shouldn't waste energy on false criticism. It's a distraction that will pull you away from fulfilling the will of God. What would the ministry example of this be? Well, a servant leader, a ministry leader ignores gossip and continues faithfully serving the Lord. How beautiful is that? Don't even waste time defending yourself. Number 8, endure misunderstanding and criticism. This is not only in chapter 6, verse 13, but it's also in chapter 13, verses 28 and 29. Some priests betrayed Nehemiah's trust, and critics misunderstood Nehemiah's motives. Yet he endured, entrusting his reputation to God. So what's this ministry principle? Well, leaders accept that not everybody will understand. A ministry example will be a youth leader continues serving faithfully even when others wrongly question their motives. Nine and 10. Lead with integrity, not intimidation. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 14. Nehemiah prayed that God would deal with false prophets who tried to intimidate him. He chose integrity over manipulation. The key principle here is that integrity outlasts manipulation. Integrity and faithfulness is godly, and manipulation is sin, evil, and wickedness. The ministry example, a lay leader avoids pressuring people to give money and instead is an active model of generosity and trust in God. And then the last of the 10 principles is celebrate milestones. Chapter 6, verses 15 and 16. In just 52 days, the wall was completed. The people celebrated, and even their enemies recognized that God had helped them. The ministry principle here, my friends, is celebrating God's victories builds faith in the community. So let's celebrate milestones. Ministry example, after finishing a mission project, the church holds a testimony service to thank God for his work. Beautiful. Praise the Lord. Let's contemplate the principles and ideas. Let's ponder them to integrate them for application. So let's take a moment and reflect on these questions. When I face discouragement, do I speak faith into myself and others, or do I let it linger? Am I easily distracted by criticism? Or do I stay focused on God's mission, God's calling, God's work? Do I fear people's opinions more than I fear God's calling? Pause and ponder, my friends. Courage and conviction keeps leaders steady when opposition arises. Nehemiah's bold faith shows that leadership requires, demands resilience, focus, and the fear of God above all else. Servant leaders who stay rooted in conviction inspire others to remain steadfast and faithful. We can do it.